All right, good afternoon, folks. Or at least it would have been when this talk was originally given at SMRRRF 2024. There was a slight technical hitch, which meant that the recording of my talk was lost halfway through, so they've asked me to re-record. So not quite the wonderful venue that was the Manchester University School of Business, but yeah, hopefully my office will be a good second option. So my name is Keegan Neve. I'm a robotics and creative technologist at a company I run called New Engineering. We're an engineering design consultancy. We make things, basically. So if you've got a one-off prototype, like converting a 3D printer into a camera for monitoring scientific experiments or anything of that sort of ilk, give me a shout and hopefully I'll be able to help out. There's the URL for my website, and it is neve.engineering. There's nothing missing from the end. It's a fancy domain, TLD. There's my YouTube channel, which is /neveng, and pretty much everywhere I am /neveng as well. So through some of those means, you can get in touch with me if you wanted to follow up anything on this, but let's crack on. So today I'm going to talk about the similarities between learning robotics and mental health. And robotics is kind of just a rough trick, basically, to a narrative crutch, but it can be any project that you're working on, and you'll be able to hopefully relate a lot to what I'm talking about here. But for me, I saw Short Circuit when I was a kid, which if you've seen my little robot NE5, you'll not be surprised about. And since then, I was obsessed with building robots. Completely fixated on getting into the cybernetics course at Reading University. They were all over the news when I was, in my run up to applying for university. So it just seemed like the best place to go. Tried really hard to get the grades I needed for that, which were physics, maths, and other. And I didn't quite get what I needed for physics and maths. So I actually resat a year of A-levels to get the grades I needed, which I managed. I also did an AS in electronics at the time, which was quite handy. And I got in. And I failed. So I didn't do my research. I got that fixated on, this is the thing I want to do, and that was it. And I just kind of blanked everything else out, which at least that's not an ADHD trait or anything, right? But what went wrong? Maths and undiagnosed mental illnesses. But the thing that really sticks out in mind is week one of engineering mathematics. They were talking about Fourier transformations and imaginary numbers, that sort of thing. And I asked the lecturer at the end, how are we going to use these? What are they used for? What's the application? Because if I don't understand the application, I can't learn something. I have to be interested in it. I have to kind of understand what the point of it is. Because if it's purely theory, I tend not to be able to get it. To get it, which is, yeah, maths is hard unless it's physics. So, if they asked me in maths to differentiate that or integrate the other, I'd struggle. But if it was a case of, right, here's an equation for a ball moving through the air, how much energy has it, gained and lost and all that sort of stuff, zero. Conservation of energy, I know, but it's been a while since I've done physics, so bear with me. I could do it because I can see how it's used, and I just understood it. So I'd learn a lot by doing and not by reading. I'm very hands-on. So just literally days before I was kicked out, having failed my second set of resits for cybernetics, I found out I was dyslexic and asked them if I could switch to computer science because I was doing really well in all the programming side of things. They thankfully said yes, and I switched over to computer science and figured I can do it as a job, and do it as a hobby. Sorry, and yeah, later on in my mid-30s, while at the SATAPS catapult, I found out I had anxiety and depression. ADHD was a couple of weeks before my 40th birthday, which was actually a really well-received present because it explained a lot. I wasn't just broke and I wasn't just a bit crap or lazy. There was an explanation. It was such a relief, which no end of people I know who've been diagnosed later in years have kind of related to. It's like, I wouldn't have known what to do if it turns out it wasn't this, maybe what everyone was saying was true. No. So that was definitely helpful for me. And they also suggested I seek a autistic sensory disorder, which I think goes under a different name now. I have issues with sensory perception, where if it's if it's a noisy room, which for most people they could filter out, it's overwhelming for me. And again, a lot of people will relate to that. But yeah, what was next from the degree aspects? And I've kind of, again, jumping all over the place. Like I said, the practical parts of the degree I was good at, so I switched to computer science, got the degree, gave up on robotics for a long time because it was too hard, because you must not be able to do it without the maths. But at some point I can pick it back up as a hobby, which thankfully I did. So where did I go from there? So these are a few of the projects I've worked on over the years. This was at the Satellite Applications Catapult. We were given a lofty goal of ending illegal fishing within a decade, which, no pressure there. But, we managed to get the system together that, took data from a constellation of 11 satellites, which was the position of pretty much every boat around the world. And we put together a proof of concept that worked. And the number of people who came to us and said, we've been trying to get only like our harbour's worth of data for vessels on the screen and it keeps crashing. How have you managed this? And it's like, no one told us we couldn't. So me and the rest of my team, my colleagues, my peers, we all had a very similar mindset of, give us a problem. If it's interesting, we'll figure it out. And none of us really had a background in maritime or the space industry or anything like that, but we were all of the same kind of mentality. And yeah, we thrived on kind of being given these sorts of problems, which again, I think there's a benefit to hiring neurodivergent folk for that reason, because we think differently. Just because someone says it can't be done doesn't mean it can't. We've been told that all our lives, so we tend to ignore it for the most part. But yeah, so this was a wonderful project. I was given 2 weeks notice to learn the Unity games development system, and that's what this ended up being built in. Since spun off into its own company called Ocean Mind Global. They do fantastic work and they've gone way beyond what this was all about. So if you're interested in this side of things, definitely look them up. A couple of other projects. Bridgetal was the last big hurrah for our team at the Catapult. We were using high-resolution radar data from satellites to measure the movement of bridges. That was in conjunction with NRC in Canada. And Project Hephaestus was monitoring opencast mining. So the idea there was that we'd be able to build something that could even run on Xbox. We never got that far, but that was kind of the aim, that we could, anyone in the area could install and have a really simple way of trawling through what is otherwise complex data. So if there was an issue with one of the mines, like leaching toxins and destroying someone's crops, they could go, actually, this is you need to give us money for compensation and help fix this. But conversely, it was supposed to be a trusted middleman or middle person. So if it turns out it was something else and not related to the mine owners could actually legitimately turn around and say, actually, we're trying to do everything right, and this time it's not us. So again, another proof of concept, and that's the sort of stuff we absolutely loved working on. So some of the projects I've built since, and these were at SMRRF, and I'll be finally doing update videos on each of these on my channel before too long. Again, I've been waiting until each one of these is done before doing a video, and perfect is the enemy of done, as many people will understand. And a lot of people at SMRRF told me the value in just talking through the problems and all the roadblocks I've hit. So I'm going to try and take that on board. And if it's not working, I'll say, it's not working. This is why. Here's what I want to do to fix it. And hopefully that'll help others learn as well. But the orange boy on there was the spanner rescue robot. Literally lost the spanner under my workshop, so built a robot one Christmas to go and get it. NE5 is there over on the right. I've got a Steam Deck that's actually being used to control the spanner bot, and I'm hoping to expand that a bit more because they're absolutely ideal for a robotics controller. And then in the bottom left, we have the luggage. So that's a big cargo robot I'm building to help me move stuff around for things like Hacky Races, which I'm one of the organisers for, and just events like SMRRF where I have lots of stuff piled on. I can just get it out of the car and just drive straight in. I can't wait. But yeah, next up, that's kind of what I am, who I do, and who I do. That's the kind of projects I've been working on professionally and as a hobbyist. And I will say I'm not a medical professional, so the next bit I'm going to talk about is things I learnt as I've gone on about ADHD, about associated afflictions. I'm not quite sure what the best term is to use this, because again, I'm not a medical professional. So this is me wanting to share some of the things I've learned, so that if it rings a bell with yourselves, you can then look it up and maybe go and get some help for that, or at least have an explanation, because I know for me that was a massive help. And the other thing I'll say is that the only reason I'm talking to you and was talking at SMRRF is because I heard the stories of other people, and it was through hearing the issues they'd faced that I realised I needed help. So I got to the point when I was at the catapult, I was getting angry an awful lot at at the stupidest of things, and that was the one of the big points when I realised I don't like being this angry. And it was about that time I saw a video by Weaton. He put a video up with Project UROK, or UROK, which is a wonderful two-way thing. It was for people to talk to teens to try and get them to understand mental illnesses a little better, and hopefully get them the help they needed earlier on. So yeah, just watching that video that Will Weaton put up was kind of the big eye-opener for me. Growing up with Star Trek Next Generation, where a lot of people might have found Wesley annoying, for me he was the outsider. He was the kid who people didn't quite understand, people didn't quite get, who got to do all of these amazing things, and I related to him, to say the least. So when he put this video out, I just watched it purely out of interest more than anything. So yeah, that's that actor who had that role I quite liked. Watching the video, him explaining his issues, I kind of got to the end of it, and there was just a moment where a four-letter word beginning with F was uttered, and I then rewatched it, sat down in the quiet for a bit, and then booked an appointment to see my doctor, and then, funnily enough, was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. So that was kind of my stepping stone on to learning more about myself. So one of the big things for ADHD, and that I struggled with for a long time, is how it affects executive function. Now, executive function is that part of your brain that lets you stay on task, stay focused when you need to, and know when you need to stop being focused as well. So it's kind of the cognitive inhibition, as I've put up here. Again, I got a lot of this from various sites online, so these are not my words, but yeah, it's the part that lets you kind of keep track of time as well, and help judge how long tasks will take. I've lost count of time. Well, every single event I've been to, it's been a case of, oh, I'll just get this done in time, and then it turns out it needs like a lot longer than I expected, and it's just something I've never been any good at, which is again why a lot of people with ADHD and similar afflictions are often late or overly early, because they know, oh, I know I'm going to be late, so I'm going to get there 4 hours early. This is why. It's because we're not able to actually understand how much time we have and what time we'll actually need to do the tasks at hand. So this is very much a core aspect of ADHD. So if this is you, that you very much need to look up and hopefully get in touch with someone who can help. Imposter syndrome, another big one. This isn't just for ADHD. I think pretty much everyone suffers with this at some point. But it's that sense that you're a fraud, or that you're waiting to be found out. And wonderfully, forgetting past achievements and concentrating on your failures. I've just noticed I've missed off the quotes at the end of the second line. So yeah, I mean, it's now I'm concentrating on that. So that's kind of this, and I'm going on a tangent, which goes back to the previous slide. But yeah, so it's the number of times when I was at Microsoft and at the Catapult, I was waiting to be found out because I didn't know what I was doing. I shouldn't be there. There were all these amazing people I worked with who had their heads screwed on. It's like, why am I here? And it was one of those things that I think a lot of them were seeing the work I was doing and thinking the same. And it's just how it works. We're all too hardwired from an evolutionary perspective to concentrate on the failures, because if we forget the failures, then we wouldn't survive. That's how evolution works. So I think that part of our brains is kind of amped up more than a little bit, which relates to anxiety, and it's all interconnected. So yeah, and I think judging your behind the scenes to others' highlight reels is kind of a good way of someone explaining, comparing lives on social media, if nothing else. But it just stands true for this. If you see, like, you've got colleagues who are presenting things and saying, look, this is what I've done and this is how it works and all that sort of stuff, you'll only see the result. You won't have seen all of the mistakes they made on the route, which happen. It's just a fact of life. But because you're seeing all of this, everything you're doing, you're unfairly handicapping yourself, because you've got all those expectations of, well, I'm having all these problems. So yeah, look it up. It's a whole thing, and I'll go down a whole rabbit hole on this one subject alone otherwise. So the next one, and this is one I actually forgot to include in my talk at SMRRF. So this is a new one. This is the director's cut for those who are there in person. Rejection sensitive dysphoria. This one was a biggie because it kind of stung when I found out about this one on many levels. And it's that whole thing of, I'll fail, so there's no point trying. It's a sensitivity to criticism, so we kind of avoid doing anything that might provoke criticism from others. And it applies to a lot of things, like not applying for a job, not starting a project because somebody's done it better, or not making a move on somebody because they can't possibly find you attractive. I will freely say this, and yeah, it's one of those things. For a very long time, I thought anytime someone showed what I thought was affection, they must be lying, they must be taking the piss, they can't be serious about this. Look at them and look at me. And it was a whole thing, and it's very much wrapped up into this. And again, this is, I've talking to a lot of my friends, similarly late bloomers when it comes to diagnoses, this kind of rung true for them as well. So it is that thing of, you need to try and get out of your own way. And there's one little trick, not clickbait, it is literally a trick that I've put at the end of this that might help. To try and kind of get you out of the cycle where, if you're thinking along those lines, you just having a way of kind of going, oh, actually, wait a minute, there's evidence that I'm not right, or at least it's worth the chance anyway. But it applies to pretty much to any aspect. I was going to say projects, relationships, career opportunities, everything, and often leads to people thinking that we're overly sensitive. Well, no one likes to be criticised. So it's one of those things where it's just that we're that little bit more amped up on these things. So again, something to be aware of, something to look up. And yeah, it's, again, an explanation for things which can help alleviate worries in itself. So just this sensitivity, one that I recently found out had a name. Excuse me. And this is apparently very common amongst the neurodiverse, where we're particularly sensitive to perceiving injustice. So it's when we see something wrong, when we see something that hasn't been done right, or when people aren't being treated well for no good reason whatsoever, it annoys us. I think it's one of those things where if we're given a problem to solve, it's similar to that, in that there's a thing that's wrong that I should be able to make better, so I'm going to put a lot of effort into doing that. But a lot of the time with these injustices, which gestures broadly at the world in general, there's individually not much we can do to make the big things go away. Collectively, yes, and we'll not go down those philosophical rabbit holes. There is hope, I will stress that. But it is just one of those things where we see the world and we feel particularly helpless. So it just sends us again down a spiral that's difficult to get out of. And I know there's been some recent events that have kind of had a big impact on me, and that have been over the past couple of years. So again, understanding that this is an aspect of just how my brain is different has helped me find ways to better cope. So when this does kick in, which frankly is rarer, I'm able to kind of settle myself quicker and kind of get back out of it. But it's a difficult one. It's evil on so many levels. And yeah, same with all of these. They're little things on these slides, but it doesn't do justice to the level of impact it can have on us. And I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged. We need to kind of say we've got a lot going on, even when we're standing still or even not even moving. We need to be kinder to ourselves, if nothing else. So yeah, healing. I think this is another thing that is probably worth discussing, because you hear about people like I've just said, I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression and then ADHD, and you hear about people's lives getting better when they start to get help, which isn't a surprise. But it's not a straight line. It's not just uphill. It's an up and a down. There are setbacks. You won't always have, every day won't be slightly better than the previous one. You will fall down every now and then, and you will have setbacks. And it's just one of those things where it doesn't mean you failed. It just means that was a bad day. And as long as you can kind of recognize that and try and kind of, again, get out of these cycles of thought that kind of can't help but drag you down. If you can recognize that and can go, right, okay, I see this is going on. Today was a bad day. This is the reason, or it might just be that you're having a bad day. They happen. But recognizing that and say, right, that's fine. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to carry on again tomorrow, and we'll pick ourselves up. And again, it's that line from Batman Begins, I think it was. It's like, why do we fall down, son? It's to learn to pick ourselves back up again, which wonderfully delivered line, and it's one that's really stuck with me. So I will give an annoyingly timely example. And this slide was added the Saturday evening of Smurf because I spent all day working on something that didn't work. A few weeks before Smurf, I was rebuilding NE5. The wiring was a mess, and I thought, you know what, I've got some time. I'm going to do this in advance because I know it will take longer than I think. That was growth. And yeah, I tidied up the wiring, shortened a load of the wire so it wasn't as much as a rat's nest, rerouted a bunch of things, rebuilt the whole thing. It looked great. As soon as I plugged on the hat that sits on top of the Raspberry Pi, it died. Took it off and swapped out the SD card. Checked all the wiring and things like that. That's it. Okay, fair enough. Swapped to a different Pi because I tested different power supplies and all that sort of stuff, and it didn't come back up. Put another Pi on there. It worked fine. Checked all the wiring. Plugged the hat back on. Popped. 4 Pis later, each time being absolutely convinced I'd found out what the problem was, it turns out that in a moment of sleep-deprived mess, one of the modules that I was using for a bunch of things, including a serial port connection from the motor controller to the Raspberry Pi, I wired it up to 5 volts rather than the GPIO output. I was repurposing some servo headers, so they were next to each other. Just a moment of mistake, which the other thing is, when I measured it side by side, it showed no voltage. So I thought, yeah, that's fine. But I didn't measure from them to ground, only across them. So again, that was more sleep deprivation, just kind of adding up. Got that working with a different Pi, Pi 3 of some kind. Closed the robot up and then shorted out the motor controller and destroyed that as well. So thankfully I got one of those on order, delivered a couple of days before Smurf. So I spent the Saturday rebuilding it with this new controller, showing people what I was doing and, you know, explaining the mistakes I made. And it literally got to 1 minute past 5 o'clock. I ran the script to initialize everything. There was a pop and the new Raspberry Pi died. I'd gone through and rechecked all of the connections before I plugged everything back in. There wasn't voltage going where it shouldn't have done. No idea why this happened. It was literally connected between the two, the motor controller and the thing. It was only when I started running the script that it happened. And the person who developed the motor controller, completely baffled. And thank you for your help with the not replacement Pis, but a couple of Pis to help with testing. Appreciated. You know who you are. I'm not going to give a name because otherwise you might be inundated. But yeah, massively helped with that. But again, it was one of those things where I spent all day. It was just at the point of victory, and I had victory snatched from into the jaws of defeat. I'm not good at wording at the minute. But yeah, so that was the 5th Raspberry Pi 5 that was destroyed. So yeah, that was not fun times. But it was one of those things where it happened, and I got to terms with it quite quickly, and, you know, brushed myself off. The next day, had another thing to talk about, and kind of explaining the different components of the robots, and yeah, it was great. The Smurf was great. That wasn't so much, but yeah, lessons learned. I still haven't figured out what's going on. I've not managed to do an autopsy on it yet, but definitely going to do that, because that's a lot of expensive mistakes to have made. They happen. That's the sad truth of these things. The thing I mentioned, the one little trick, I call it the Scrapbook of wins. So these are a few of mine. You've got the spanner rescue robot on the top right there. It was an incredibly silly idea that kind of panned out. Again, video coming for that one soon. Bottom right there, the bat left that my good friend Ron is holding. It started out as a joke. I said to Reshma, oh yeah, you should have a bat left for cutting the cake. And she went, that'd be amazing. So I got a sheet of aluminium and made one. Jigsaw and an awful lot of sanding, and that was about it. But yeah, it's a silly little joke that kind of got out of hand, which is kind of my MO. Bottom left there we have Hacky Racers, a little DIY electric racing series I'm part of, which is loads of fun. Never been in a single race. I've always just done the kind of race control, telemetry and comparing and things like that. It's that much fun seeing everyone else out there racing that, yeah, the past 7 years or so it's kept me going. And on the unexpected, on the top left, I was on David and Jay's touring tool shed, so I got to meet David, Jason and Jay Blades, which was an amazing experience. And again, the robot was broken for the majority of the day, so that's another tale in itself. Other ones are a bit sillier. We've got the time one of my friends in the pub said, oh yeah, so how much would you have to raise to get waxed for charity? I said a number, and within 5 minutes they'd almost reached it, so we massively increased it, and yeah, ended up being for a good cause. It was a silly thing I kind of went through with, but yeah. And then on the left there, an amazing moment when I got to meet Ryan Howard's Johnny 5, goes by the Johnny 5 replica Nottingham. It was an amazing moment, just opening his doors, and Johnny 5 was stood there and said hello. I was 8 years old again. And of course I had to take my robot along to introduce him, so because it was rude not to. And again, it was Will Weaton's video that got me on this track to getting the help I needed. And he was at a Star Trek convention in Birmingham a few years back now. I'm wearing the wrong uniform. I couldn't get a TNG era one in time. It kind of annoys me, but yeah, needs must. But yeah, I got to very briefly meet him. I said, you know, sharing your story helped me, so thanks for that. And yeah, he just leaned over and said, you're very welcome, and just never forget, depression lies. Which, if you see the video, his video, it'll make more sense. But yeah, he obviously cared, and that was kind of added to it as well. But the last item in the Scrapbook of wins is, again, the silliest of ideas that kind of went way further than I ever expected. And this is the kind of the world view of the Legal Fishing project I mentioned back at the start. And it's built in the Unity Games engine, so we were always saying, oh yeah, you know, despite it all being just a big flat display on a wall, this is 3D. And people kept, every time I gave the demo, it's like, oh yeah, but it's just flat. It irked me. So one weekend, it wasn't in the specifications, it was just something I did one weekend, just to kind of prove the point. And I added an extra feature, which hopefully is going to play. And that's it. It turned out to be a couple of lines of code, though it took me a long time to figure that out. It was just taking that flat map and kind of turning it into the globe you can see here. And it was just on the video wall. It was an impressive sight, and it was it's the thing we did at the end as a bit of a party piece. And again, it wasn't in the specifications because you can't use this as an analyst. It's literally just a screensaver, if anything else. And yeah, I liked it. People enjoyed it, and it was a bit of fun one weekend. Fast forward to COP26. I got messages from some of my colleagues that halfway through Sir David Attenborough's talk, there's the globe I did one weekend for a laugh. And that was mind-boggling. Like, countless world leaders all grouped together, and yeah, I don't doubt for a second that it was just whoever put his presentation together had this, and they put that in as an example. But the great thing is, he said this is halfway through his speech when he's talking about how all the negative impact we've had in the world, and then he says, "But on the other side, we are the greatest problem solvers this planet has ever known." And then my work comes up on the screen. I'm proud of that, to say the least. Can't have planned it in any way, shape or form. But yeah, that's a thing that happened. So again, silly ideas, go with them, embrace them. Don't think that you can't do this because other people have tried and failed. They might not have a certain insight you do. They might just not be aware it's impossible. Or someone's told them it's possible even, and you haven't been told. So yeah, it's just give it a go, have a laugh. And I've put up some examples of some amazing things I've done. Again, this feeds back into, this is my highlights reel comparing to your behind the scenes. Like, one of the simplest little inventions, if that's even a term, that I've made is still this. It's a closed peg previously on. It's a closed peg on a keyring, basically. And anyone who is also a fellow hat wearer will know how annoying it can be that there are no hat racks anywhere anymore. So this just lets you use a keyring to hang up your coat. Hang up your hat. It's a silly little thing that I threw together ages ago because it was a problem that was annoying me. And that's still one of the simplest inventions I'm proud of, to be honest. So again, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can just be something that solves a problem for you. It could be just getting out of bed in the morning. Christ, I'd known that's a big problem most days. And yeah, so general advice. Find people to talk to share your troubles with. There's a weird thing with neurodivergent folk where even without realizing it, even without diagnoses, we tend to group together and find our clans. I think it's because we're the only ones who put up with ourselves without knowing why. But yeah, if you talk to your friends, it's likely that they share similar problems. You're not a burden. Like, if people say you're lazy or slobbish or whatever, which I've had countless times over the years, if you relate to a lot of these things, it's likely there's an underlying reason why. And keeping track of clutter and staying organized is incredibly difficult for me, certainly, and folks like me. There's the other side of the scale where people are obsessively clean, and it can have different problems as well. So, both ends of the scale, still issues. But yeah, you're not a burden. Healing isn't a flat road. There's ups and downs, and like I said, just pick yourselves up and try and crack back on the next day if you are knocked down. And depression lies. It's like Confidence and Paranoia, a wonderful episode of the sitcom Red Dwarf. Depression kind of lies to you to kind of keep, it's not conscious obviously, but it's almost like it is trying to protect itself. So it's like, oh no, you can't have depression, it's just that you didn't sleep well, or you've just got a lot of work on at the minute, or this or that or the other. You'll come up with countless excuses and explanations as to why it's not depression and why you don't need help. It's just you need to try harder. No, it's not always the case. And yeah, do seek the help that you deserve if if any of this relates. And again, yeah, the scrapbook of wins. It's something I don't update and look at enough, but I need to be better at doing that, because I do get stuck in those cycles the same as other people do. And yeah, finally, I don't know who the original quote is from, but I just know it from the legend that is Captain Jean-Luc Picard, and that is, "It's possible to make no mistakes and still fail. That is not weakness, that is life." And ain't that all too true? So I hope this has helped. And again, that's all my contact details again. If you want to reach out, you can go through social media. I think I'm everywhere apart from Twitter now, for obvious reasons. But yeah, if you've got a story you want to share, I always like to hear them, because again, that's why I got help in the first place. And I know not everybody is able to share their stories, but if you're able to, and if you're comfortable doing so and safe to do so, I would encourage you to do, because you never know who else it might be helping. So the number of times I've spoken about this and then had someone come up to me afterwards and go, yeah, thank you. May never hear from them or see them again, but yeah, knowing that I've had that little impact is why I carry on doing this. I have a loud mouth and I'm happy to use it. So yeah, thank you for joining me on this, and hopefully see you in person at the next Smurf, wherever that may be. So thank you for your time, and look after yourselves.